YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here. And I'm going to be playing a battle on, what is this? Heirot Ridge or whatever? Yeah. Anyway, this map really reminds me of one in Fall of the Samurai. I'm playing as the Empire. Let's introduce you to my army. I've got a front line of spearmen. They are being supported. There's two warrior priests. There's one on each flank riding on this barded warhorse. And I'm going to talk a little bit about them, why I brought them. I've got three great swords, one regular swordsman. I've got an amber wizard also on his barded warhorse here. And then I've got two handgunners kind of hanging out in the back. And then I've got two demigryph knights with halberds. I'm playing up against the vampires, and not all of their army is visible at the moment, but most of it is. He's got a line of graveguard in the back, zombies, mortis engine. Now his graveguard are not the armor-piercing variety. He's got a white king supporting, a cairn wraith on this flank, and he's got fellbats supporting a flying goon squad here, which he spent quite a lot of money on between Strigoi and a Terrorgeist, plus the fellbats. So the two fellbats together, that's about 700 gold, 2,000 for this Terrorgeist, and at least another 2,000 for the one that Strigoi is on. So you're talking about a considerable portion of his army that he has spent in the air, and a considerable portion of the remaining is going to go into this mortis engine and the white king. The white king not too bad, but the mortis engine pretty expensive. So it's going to be 4 graveguard and a cairn wraith, and then he's lining these guys up front with zombies. So he's over here. Strigoi does not have Wind of Death, at least not that I'm aware of. He's got Spirit Leech and Invocation and some of the other stuff, so I wasn't real worried about Wind of Death. These warrior priests, again, let's talk about it. So I've taken away all of their abilities, basically, because most of their abilities are kind of crummy, to be honest. At least I feel like they are. Strigoi pulls up and wants to Spirit Leech one of my warrior priests, and I go ahead and shoot him with my handgunners to push him back. So I guess that's fine. Not much I can do about it. I have my Amber Wizard for a couple of purposes. One was if the vampires didn't really bring flying units, I was going to be able to summon a Manticore. So I did bring that option, and I'm keeping my Amber Wizard right here next to my Demigryph Knights, and there's a reason for that. It's because I know that Strigoi isn't going to want to come anywhere near these Demigryph Knights with halberds, and neither will the Terrorgeist. So that's the whole reason why I brought these units, is to act as anti-large. And since I wasn't bringing a flying squad, I have to have a way to answer a flying squad if it lands on me, and Demigryph Knights are an excellent answer to it. So the Amber Wizard here, like I said, could be used for a Manticore or Doomflock. In this case, it's going to be Doomflock. Some people really underestimate the capabilities of Doomflock for the Empire. So I have a relatively weak infantry corps with lots of anti-large capability, leadership support from the warrior priest, because one of the abilities that I have here, you'll notice, I did bring a Scroll of Shielding, just so that I could throw that out there if I needed to use it on a unit. And then they get +8 leadership to the units who are nearby. It's only 30 meters, but something. It helps. And then they themselves are heroes that would have to be killed by the vampires. And so the whole point was just to have a little extra hit points for relatively cheap, because when you take all the abilities off these guys, they don't cost all that much. And then the +8 leadership can be nice. I'm going to go ahead and move my swordsmen into the second line, so I've got 2 infantry lines. And I'm leaving my spears up front, but I'm not going to sacrifice my spears to these graveguard and zombies. I'm just leaving them there for the moment, and I'm going to pull my main infantry line forward eventually. The White King is going to be focus fired right now with my handgunners. You can see my opponent is very hesitant to attack me with his flying forces here because of the Demigryph Knights. Here comes the second Doomflock. I think I actually threw one out there already, actually. Yeah, and it hit this Cairn Wraith earlier. It does great damage to Cairn Wraiths because they have no resistance to magic at all. You can see I'm doing major damage to these Graveguard. I'm just going to keep using Overcast Doomflock as it becomes available. The White King, again, suffering decent hit point damage here. I'm going to go ahead and charge forward with my infantry and my warrior priest. So here's the warrior priest going to charge into the zombies. They're going to be backed up by my great swords and swordsmen. And of course the zombies will be easy fodder, and then my spears are just going to make up a second line for defense, while my main infantry force, supported by my warrior priest, is going to try and do all the work. I'm going to wait for the graveguard to join the fray, and then I'm going to use my scrolls of shielding on one of my great swords just to give them some extra durability. It's an extra 22% ward save, basically, that you can use that scroll of shielding. And now, of course, I could use it on the warrior priest themselves, but I figured it may do more good on my great swords. You can see there's scroll shielding there, and another one here, so it's 22% damage resistance for a little over a minute. So that means they'll take, almost a quarter less damage for a minute. And I think that's going to be worth it based on the fight they're in. The Terrorgeist is going to go ahead and swoop down here. Doomflock dropping again. And I'm going to get lots of damage done over here on the Graveguard and the, well, those Tithe zombies. I got confused there. I was thinking it's the Stearnsmen. The Stearnsmen are over here. I'm going to bring my leader into the battle to try and help finish off the White King. Right now, the Strigoi Ghoul King is going to raise up some Crypt Ghouls here. Try and keep my handgunners busy, but my Demigryph Knights are just going to swoop in real quick and destroy these guys. And I'm keeping my Spears and my Amber Wizard back at a distance where I want to keep them safe. Mortis Engine is getting some damage done right now. It's definitely pulling away a lot of hit points from these great swords. Not exactly what I want. And then my Warrior Priest over here has gone ahead and faltered in the battle. He's the one that got hit with the Spirit Leech early, but the other one's still doing pretty solid work. Another Doomflock in here. It's going to really jack up these Cairn Wraiths who had been healed. And it's going to start to pull some hit points off the Stearnsmen as well. So 46 kills over here on my Warrior Priest. Most of them were probably zombies, but still kind of fun. I went ahead and threw in some Spearmen as reserves over here because it looks like we needed it. So I'm just going to be keeping the Spears as active reserve, and my guns are just going to keep working priority targets, which, like in this case, is going to be the Mortis Engine. So the Mortis Engine is going to eat all my fire, and again, my opponent is just way too scared to come land on my gunners, which is perfect because it means my gunners are going to be able to do exactly what they need to do here, which in this case is destroy the Mortis Engine. So the Mortis Engine's trying to stay nearby and be a bit of a nuisance, but it's eating a lot of fire here. There it goes. So Mortis Engine's out for the vampires, so that's one support unit down. I can now start either focusing on the Terrorgeist or on the Strigoi Ghoul King. Dropped another Doomflock over here just to try and get rid of more of his infantry because my infantry's not doing great in this vicinity. It's starting to get pretty weak. Terrorgeist is chewing into my men over here, and the Terror works. So I'm going to come in and reinforce with a Spear unit to hold the Terrorgeist in place. So again, using the active reserves, my Demigryph Knights are my last line of reserve, and they're protecting the Amber Wizard, who's dealing significant amounts of damage to the enemy infantry. And they're also protecting my gunners. They're the Demigryph Knights are. So they're serving a dual role here: protect my offensive power in the Amber Wizard and protect my handgunners. My frontline infantry provided some pretty good service. I knew the vampires would be replenishing, but I figured that I could outlast them with the help of Doomflock. So at this point, because of the positioning of Strigoi and the Terrorgeist, I feel safe enough to pull one Demigryph Knight off and help my Lord, who's kind of struggling to finish off this White King. So I bring in my Demigryph Knights with halberds and just look at how fast they start to chew up this White King. And I can use my handgunners to keep Strigoi away from the battle because he's about to die. So he's going to continually be pushed back. I've got guard mode on my handgunners so they don't take off running. And here you can see the Terrorgeist is going to bust through my Spearmen. And he's going to get stopped by the Demigryph Knights. So this is why I kept them in reserve this whole time. And the Terrorgeist is going to do very, very poorly versus Demigryph Knights with halberds. And now that White King is pretty much dead, he's crumbling, I'm going to pull my Lord away and the Demigryph Knights, and again, just kind of keep falling back to my guns and my Amber Wizard. So they're going to be like the fallback position for me. Over here, I've wrapped up some of the infantry, and I'm going to be able to start pushing across. The White King's gone. The Terrorgeist is now debilitated and crumbling. So I hit him with another Demigryph Knight charge just to try and speed his passing. And now the balance of power is going to really turn against the vampires. The Ghoul King is dying. There he goes. And the rest of their forces are going to fall apart without that leadership. So here you can see the vampires crumble. This is another instance in which I just think that some of the unique units and abilities of the Empire can really come to show themselves over the vampires. And to me, I know some people don't feel as strongly about it. I think most people do, but the Empire is definitely the strongest faction, in my opinion. And I don't know if this build was like the greatest thing since sliced bread or whatever. It's just something I was, messing around with because I wanted to use some Warrior Priest. I rarely get to use them. I don't use the Amber Wizard a whole lot either, and I figured that might be fun. And so I tried to take something maybe less predictable for the Empire. A lot of people just really rely on air spam right now, and I really find it fun. Sometimes I'll use the air spam. I say spam, you know what I mean, like a flying squad, like a flying hero squad or something. And that's pretty typical from the Empire, and they're pretty good at it. And you can see, though, that that's what the vampires wanted me to do. So they had their fell bats ready to stop charges, and then they had the Terrorgeist and Strigoi, who would have been a fairly formidable force up in the air. Now, of course, if I would have just fought them close to my handgunners, it wouldn't have mattered. But the whole point of this was, if my opponent spends a bunch of his funds to bring, because a vampire flying squad is extremely expensive, and my thought was, if he's going to spend his funds on a flying squad, I'm going to pull him down to the ground. So I put nothing in the air, not even my Empire captain. And that meant that the vampires wouldn't have a suitable air target, meaning that they would have to land at some point to be useful, and that's where the Demigryph Knights come in. If he had brought a flying squad, the chances of him bringing something good like Blood Knights are far less, because he will have spent so much on the flying squad that he would have a hard time affording the Blood Knights. So again, where I can cheap out on 4 units of spears here and just get some sturdy holding power, my opponent has no great option to do the same with the vampires. Let's go take a look at it, actually, and just kind of show you what I'm thinking here in the custom battle. So again, if vampires, and a lot of people have been liking the flying goon squad again with vampires recently, and that's fine. I think that it can be useful sometimes if you do it right. I think these are the spells. So 2179 is the spin for Strigoi Ghoul King. He had a Terrorgeist, and he had 2 fell bats. And he would need the fell bats in order to stop the charge of any Empire flying units. And to me, this is still pretty risky here. Because, you know, if I brought 2 Empire captains that are flying with an Empire general, still going to be in a lot of trouble, especially if I have ground support. And what this does is it starts to limit the usefulness of the vampire infantry. So it forces him to make a decision. So, like, if he needs Blood Knights against the Empire, potentially, right? Because you might have to deal with Demigryph Knights or good cavalry. If he spins on 2 of those, I mean, just, again, start to look at the spin, how fast we're adding up. But I still think that this would have been a better choice. If he gets forced to land his flying units, he has Blood Knights to help try and take out my cavalry. He has Blood Knights to protect him from cavalry if I run it around. He has Blood Knights to try and get to skirmishers. So I almost think that these guys would have been necessary, but this is going to force his army to become very small and very elite. If he really wants to bring a Mortis engine, now you're talking about really eating up some of the very little spin that you have left. And, I mean, again, just kind of look where we're at here. Not a lot of options for where he can go. So with this amount of spend and kind of monstrous and support units, it would almost become necessary. And I do think you need some kind of support unit at this point for this army. And I don't know if the Mortis engine becomes the best choice or not. But I mean, you could always bring a corpse cart with the Unholy Lodestone. That would be a pretty good support, and it would be a lot cheaper. You're definitely going to need potentially a little bit of anti-armor and then the Sternsman. But again, see where this leaves you? I mean, you've got so very little infantry. If you wanted to cut back 1 Blood Knight, it would leave you a little more opportunity. I wouldn't bring more than 4 decent infantry as the vampires. But again, now you got 871. Where do you want to spend that? He had a White King. If you took away some of the abilities here, so let's get rid of Strigoi. I mean, you could plop a White King out here and try and just cheap out on him. Just get the healing potion. So yeah, you could definitely do that, and you'd have enough money left over for Strigoi if you came in here and then rebalanced his spells. So you could do that. I mean, that might be a possible build that would have been a little bit better than what he brought here. The Graveguard with great weapons and the Sternsman would have performed better than what he brought. The other option that you have, and it's not a bad option in my opinion, when you consider what they're worth, is cut these Graveguard because they're expensive. Maybe go with 1 more zombie and just come in with some horrors. Now, these guys are vulnerable to skirmish fire, but that's the whole reason you brought the Black Knight, right? And if you're going to bring the horrors and the zombies, I'm not even sure if the corpse cart becomes a huge benefit to you at that point. I mean, you don't want to buff up zombies, and crypt horrors are going to do pretty well anyway in terms of melee attack and stuff, so I'm not sure if you'd even want to bring the corpse cart, and that might help afford you a little bit of money for something else. So I don't know, just some thoughts. What do you think? What kind of vampire army do you think would have worked better against what I had there? I think that him bringing the flying force is a mistake. If you look at how much he could save on the flying force by just cutting that off, and then if you want to bring Strigoi, fine. He's a little bit mushy when you put him on the ground. So you know, maybe a better potential pick would have been to brought Vlad here. If you're going to keep him on the ground, then you can get rid of most of this magic. Some of these are going to be useful. Or Wind of Death. I don't know. Vlad doesn't get around much, so I'd probably just drop Wind of Death. replenishes hit points of combatants self. Hit points of combatants on self. I mean, you'd probably want all this stuff for Vlad, I would think, so that'll keep him regenerating. And then again, now this leaves me a little bit more money to spend here. Would you want the horrors? I don't know. You'd probably want another unit of Blood Knights if you're going to be all on the ground. You've got one White King for support. And then let's think through this a little bit more here. I mean, having a couple of units of zombies can certainly go a long way. And that would give you a little more flexibility here. Maybe cut it back to one horror and throw in the Sternsman. So, I don't know. Maybe that would have been better, because here he could have kept my Demigryph Knights busy. With Vlad's help and the White King, they could have done pretty good against some of my heroes. At least I think they could have. And the bats would no longer be necessary since you didn't have the flying army, and you might be able to afford yourself another horror here. So use the horrors to break through the lines and try and get to the guns. Use the Blood Knights to try and keep the Demigryph Knights busy. And that would pretty much do it, I think, at least. So, but yeah, I mean, the Empire, of course, they have nets of Ammontok too. I didn't bring him in this case, which is rare, but I don't know. Anyway, I'm sitting here like thinking in circles around myself. Tell me what you all think. Do you like the battle? Do you like the build? Do you have fun with that? What do you like when you're facing the Empire with vampires? Do you have a favorite strategy you go with? HeirofCarthage signing out. I appreciate you all watching, and I'll see you next time.